Hi everybody, Zana here for another episode of Zana's Closet. Today's episode is one I'm quite attached to. RPGs. Not console RPGs, tabletop RPGs. Now what do I mean when I say tabletop RPGs? Well, one that probably sticks out the most in your mind is Dungeons & Dragons. And I may have mentioned a couple times before in passing in a couple episodes previous that I played Dungeons & Dragons. And this episode is going to be mainly girls' tips to girls on playing Dungeons & Dragons. Now, I know there aren't very many girls out there who play Dungeons & Dragons yet. It's still fairly a new thing for girls to play tabletop RPGs. It's mainly a guy thing. Even in my group, there are very few girls. Before there were only 2 of us, and now it's just gone up to 3. Mainly because I got one of my best friends involved, and she was with a group previously, but her group wasn't very good. It was a very dysfunctional group, I'll just say that much. There were more girls in that group, but they were... I'll just stick with dysfunctional. Anyway, the Girl's Guide to Girls Playing RPGs. Mainly because I've experienced playing RPGs with a couple other girls, and I don't want to sound snobbish when I say that they weren't very good players. What do I mean by that? Well, there were a few things that is expected from a DM when you're running a game from your players. And Silent is the DM or dungeon master of our game. And a few things are expected of the players, and those are the rules that you're expected to go by. And those are the tips that I'm going to be giving out today. Now, they're not just for girls. Guys will follow these rules too. All the guys in my game follow these rules. And have followed these rules, and to this day still follow these rules. So if you're interested in learning how to play a tabletop RPG, are interested, keep watching this video, and if you're interested, then I don't want to say do what I say, but yeah, do what I say. So anyway, rule number 1 to getting into an RPG is it really for me? That's rule number 1. And I was lucky enough to have my brother, who is 7 years older than I am. I'm 23 right now, so he's turning 30 this year. And I learned how to play when I was 17. So that would make him what? 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 20. He was 24 at the time. And I was his ditzy teenage sister who had heard that he was playing Dungeons & Dragons and hadn't really heard that much about it. And at that time, I kind of liked playing RPGs on my PlayStation 2 and on my Game Boy Advanced. So I was kind of interested, but didn't know if I was really. So what I did is I asked him if he could teach me, but he wasn't sure if I'd be interested either. So what he did is he had me actually sit in on one of his sessions one night. And it was him and I believe about 4 or 5 of his other friends. And this is back when he was living in Florida. And after that was like during the summer of, I want to say, 2007 that this happened. It was right before I went into senior year of high school, summer of 2007, that I sat in on this game. And I was like, this is actually pretty interesting. I can see myself doing this. So, first semester of school of my senior year went by, and I kept thinking about it. So I was like, I'd actually like to learn how to play. And 4.0 which is the version that's out right now, was fairly new. So next time I went down there was during about Christmas time. And my brother had... I went back to my brother and I said, I'm interested in learning how to play. Straight out, I'm interested in learning how to play. Please teach me. Before he even let me roll a single dice, he had me read the player's handbook. Not cover to cover, but at least had me read the first couple chapters before he let me do anything involved with making a character, rolling any dice, getting in any encounters, anything. And then he started teaching me. And then I actually got to start playing. And that was the best way to learn. So rule number 1, find out if you're interested first. The best way to do this is to go to your local hobby store or comic book store and see if there are any local games going on. And see if maybe you can sit in on any of those games. Usually, if there are people looking for players, there will be a bulletin board up, or you can ask the owner if anybody's looking for players. And there will be posts up, or they'll be asking the comic book, the owner of the store, to keep a lookout for anybody looking to join a game. It's not so prevalent nowadays, but any store that's really into stocking the RPGs and the dice and anything like that will know if people are looking for players. And the players will go there to post their notices that they are looking for players for their specific games. So you contact the DM. It's most likely going to be the DM posting the notice. So you call the DM. Don't be shy. You call the DM. You ask if you say you're new to tabletop RPGs and you'd like to sit in on a session just to see if you're interested first. So you do that. And let's say you find out you're interested. What do you do next? Well, there are 2 options. There are 2 options to this. You need to read the instructions to the RPG. And there are lots of RPGs out there. Depending on the RPG you're going to be getting into, you need to buy the manual. Now, what manual am I talking about? If you're going to be a player, you need to buy the player's handbook. If you're going to be a DM, you need to buy the DM's guide and the monster manuals. I actually have my player's handbook to Dungeons and Dragons. This is my copy. This is version 4.0. I got this and the DM's guide and monster manual. This is player's handbook 1. And I got monster manual 1 and DM handbook 1 for Christmas a couple years ago. I got these from my brother. Brand new books. Because I always wanted them, but at the time that I got these, we were playing 3.5, so they didn't really matter very much. But now we're playing 4.0, so I get to use them every single meeting. So say you're interested and you want to learn how to play that game. You need to buy the handbook. If you don't want to DM the game, you need to buy the player's handbook so you know how to play. In here will be every instruction that you need to make a character and to roll the dice and to calculate what your moves are. Every instruction is in this book, so you need to read this book. Maybe not cover to cover, but you need to read at least the first couple chapters of this book to know what you're doing. This is important. If you don't read this book, you're not going to know what you're doing. And Dungeon Masters love it when their players know what they're doing and they don't have to babysit. I'm going to get back to that later. Rule number 2 is learn how to role play. Actually, I'll get back to this in a second. I do play a couple other RPGs. Another one that I've played that I actually own is this one here, which is released by the same company as Dungeons and Dragons, which this is Gamma World. It's a simplified version of Dungeons and Dragons. It's 4.0 light. Gamma World is set in a post-apocalyptic Earth, and making characters is easier in this game, but the encounters are so much, I wouldn't say they're so much harder, because 4.0 encounters are hard as well, especially if you're doing it the same way that the DM's guide tells you to do it. But it's a good fun game to play with friends if you've got nothing else to do, and it's really easy to play. Dungeons & Dragons also has the Red Box, which is an even easier version of an introduction to Dungeons & Dragons than Gamma World. It pretty much has templates for for 4 basic classes: Cleric, Warrior, Rogue, and Mage, or something like that. Templates for 4 or 5 basic classes, and a basic adventure that another player can DM. That's basically what it is. It's a basic learn how to play D&D adventure that you can play with a group of friends. If you want to get a group of friends involved, if you don't have a group of friends who play Dungeons and Dragons and you want to get your friends involved in your interests, it's basically a board game. Just like in Gamma World's basically a board game as well. Just ball-bustingly hard. So you've got your player's handbook. You know you're interested in learning how to play, and you've read your player's handbook. What's the next step? You buy yourself some dice. Now you can buy Dungeons and Dragons dice at any hobby store or game store or comic book store. And the basic set, this is a special set of ordered dice that I ordered, that me and Silent ordered specially. They're called Game Science dice. And I got interested in buying a set of these specifically because I watched the Comic-Con. That wasn't Comic-Con. What was it? I forget what it was. But the Spoonie one from the Spoonie Experiment had a game run from a convention that he went to. And he specifically had Game Science dice with him. And I follow the Spoonie one religiously. He's like a D&D god to me. Anyway, what these dice are, if you play Dungeons and Dragons, you know what I'm talking about. Normal dice that you buy at any kind of hobby store have rolled edges, they're not sharp edges. They're rounded edges. Game size dice don't. And the reason why dice that you buy at any hobby store have rounded edges is because they're made in a rock tumbler. And these dice tend to be weighted to a particular size, to a particular side. So they can roll up either lucky or unlucky or kind of average. And you tend to want to buy dice that roll lucky. Technically, it's cheating. But what game size dice are is they're not made in a rock tumbler. They're made with science. So every edge on each of these dice are sharp. You have your D20, you have your D12, you have 2 D10s, which together make a D100 for percentages. You have your D8, you have a D6, which is basically just a regular die. You can get pretty much anywhere and work just as well. And you have your D4. And these have to be special ordered from a very specific place. So you have your dice, you have your sheet made up, and you have your pencil. Pencils are just as important. You have to have a pencil. You don't use pen because you're going to be doing a lot of erasing. You have your pencil with lead and an eraser. So, tip number 3. role play. DMs love it when their players role play. I don't mean that you just show up and you roll your dice and there you go. Role play. Say your character is lawful good. What does that mean? It means your character abides by the law of their god or by the specific city that they're from, no matter what. If the character is chaotic evil, what does that mean? It means that the character is in it for themselves, whether or not it hurts people. They'll do whatever it takes to do what's good for them, no matter what. And chaotic neutral is used mainly as a cop-out. Say you don't want to role play, you write down chaotic neutral on your sheet, and you can pretty much get away with anything. It's the cop-out. It's the cop-out alignment, pretty much. I used to use chaotic neutral a lot, mainly because I didn't really know too much about role-playing at the time, so I put down chaotic neutral, and then I would try to get a feel for how role-playing worked. But I'm a lot more comfortable with it now. So right now I'm running a lawful good paladin of a very specific god, with a very specific virtue of always be true to mercantilism, which is, as long as you're good and true to trading, which is you don't treat the merchants out of their money, and you always pay full price, then you're good with your god. That's my character's god. So, role play. If you role play and you know how to play, your DM will absolutely love you. And those are the 3 rules. Those are the 3 steps. Find out if you're interested in tabletop gaming first. Get the book and read it, and learn how to role play. Those are the 3 steps. They're actually really easy. I was lucky because I had my brother teach me how to play. I didn't really have to do much learning on my own. I mean, I had to do learning later when I found Gamma World, and I joined another group besides my regular DM group, my regular D&D group, which plays GURPS and D20 Modern. And I had to learn on my own how to play those. But if you role play and you learn how to play your game and you remember how to play your game, then you're all set. Why do I bring this up? Well, it's a topic that's kind of come up in my group before. We have this one player who is a girl. I'm a girl, she's a girl, who, well, I described her before as the kind of girl who gives girls the reputation of being not good at gaming. They don't bother learning how to play. They lean on the guys to do all their calculations for them, to make their characters for them, and to tell them what to do. Me and her have had a falling out about it a while back. It was a couple years ago that we had this falling out. And since then we've gotten over it. But she still ticks me off, because she's not interested in playing Dungeons and Dragons. The only reason she comes to our meeting is so she can just hang out on her computer and be around us. That's the only reason. And the reason that we come to the meeting is so we can play Dungeons and Dragons. We love playing Dungeons and Dragons. She just wants to hang out on her computer, on her Facebook, on her other social sites, and just be there. She's not interested in playing at all. She's not interested in role-playing at all. And it ticks me off because I've worked so hard to learn how to play this game and to be good at playing this game. I originally learned how to play 4.0, and when I joined our group, they weren't playing 4.0, they were playing 3.5. And they were playing 3.5 up until just this spring when we moved to 4.0. So I had to relearn how to play Dungeons and Dragons through 3.5. So what I did is I didn't have somebody teach it to me. I had one of my friends give me the PDFs, and I did what my brother taught me to do, which is read the first few chapters and then make my own character. And then have one of my friends look over the sheet to make sure I did it right. Because I didn't want to do it wrong and then mess up the game because my character isn't written down wrong. Or my character is broken because I didn't add up something right. And she just ticked me off because she broke every rule that I just laid out for you guys. She didn't learn how to play. She didn't bother. She doesn't role play at all. She doesn't bother. She doesn't even try to pay attention. And always pay attention. Always pay attention. If you role play, if you pay attention, and if you learn how to play, your DM will love you. She doesn't do that. I always do that. And it just ticks me off. So those are the basic rules. DMs love it. And Silent has said this. DMs, and I'm going off on a rant now. But this is the final thing for this video, I promise. I won't let it go on for like 45 minutes like I have for like my last video. Your DM will love you and give you tons of experience if you role play your alignment and your specific character and their background, which is what one of the players in my game has done tonight. It's actually, well, it's Saturday now, but it was Friday. He's playing a vampire who was turned against his will for a very specific reason. And he played so well tonight, so well. He was given 400 experience points just for his role playing. That's unbelievable. But it was so amazing, his role playing tonight. And I'm loving what Silent's starting to do with us. Because there are some of us who are really into the whole role playing thing, and there's some of us who aren't, like her. So he's starting to gradiate the role playing scale. If we role play, we get experience. And it all depends on how much we role play. If we role play a lot, we get a lot of it. We get about, if we don't, well, let me start at the bottom. If we don't role play at all, we get nothing. We get none. If we role play a little bit, we get 100 experience. And it goes up from there. He should really be making a list of all the stuff that we do. And going up in like 50s or something. But yeah. So that's pretty much all I have to say on the subject. Find out if you're interested. Learn how to play. Learn how to role play. And that's it. That's all 3 steps. Learn your game. And be good at your game. Don't be excellent. Nobody's excellent. The dice are never going to come up in your, are hardly ever going to come up in your favor. I mean, I rolled crap tonight. I mean, first encounter of the night, I only hit the monster once. Once. It sucked. Yes, it sucked. But I didn't get upset about it. That's another thing. Don't get upset if you die. I've seen so many rants and freaking, what's the word I'm looking for? It's another player in our group who has this tendency of throwing just the worst hissy fits when things don't go his way. And he's gotten better. He's gotten better. But it was just, it was hard to play with him before he got better at doing this, because his character would die. He wouldn't roll the roll that he wanted, and he would just throw the worst hissy fits. But it's gotten better. He's gotten better. And I'm glad for that, because he's a really fun guy to be around when he's not, throwing hissy fits about his rolls and stuff like that. So, yeah, that's it. This is my girls' guide to tabletop RPGs. For girls and guys, if you guys are having trouble. So yeah, girls, we need to play RPGs more. Get away from your console and your Japanese RPGs with the silly soap opera storylines. Play tabletop RPGs. They're fun. Not all tabletop RPGs are going to be like the Japanese RPGs. A lot of them are going to be kind of like Western RPGs. They're very much like the Dragon Age 2s and the Dragon Age Origins and the Mass Effect 3 in the Mass Effects, and and the I'm looking at my shelf, and the Oblivions and things like that, and the Elder Scrolls series, and they're very much more like Western RPGs, unless you're running a very specific game, which is more Japanese RPG than Western. And there are tons of different kinds of RPGs. You have to look around, because there's also Planescape, and there's ones for Babylon 5, and the Lord of the Rings, which I've heard the Lord of the Rings one is god-awful. God-awful. Don't play that one. I've heard it's god-awful. But yeah, there's tons. There's tons of RPGs out there. Go looking. Go looking. Go find yourself a group. Go play. Make yourself a group. Become the DM. Read the DM's handbook. But the DM's handbook you'll have to read all the way through. All the way through. Cover to cover. Just to understand what the hell you have to do. But yeah. And I'm not a DM. So for the DM stuff, I would recommend going to thespoonyexperiment.com and watching the Spoony one's suggestions for DMs. Because he has some really great advice for DMs wanting to make better games. Because I'm not a DM, I'm a player. I can give advice for players wanting to be better players. And that's about it. I mean, I'm working on a Gamma World campaign right now. I'm building my own Gamma World campaign. I mean, I don't really have much of it built right now. I'm working on the map right now. I'm starting from the bottom up. I'm starting with the map, and then I'm building my way up. But that's about all I have. So, when I get more, I will... Ooh, bad connection. When I get more, then I plan on co-running a game with it. But it won't be an online game or anything like that, because I don't know exactly how online games work. There are online games too, now that I think about it. There are forums and things like that you can go on to find online games that you can get into through Skype and things like that. I've never been on an online game before, but I forget what the site is called. The Spoony experiment, the Spoony one knows the specific forum site, so you'll have to go on there and see. I believe it's through his video getting into. I believe it's through his video getting into role playing, something like that. So you'll have to go onto his site and take a look, because I've never done online RPGs before. Oh, there's also Planescape too. That's an excellent RPG. I've never played it before, but it is amazing. It's gone through so many iterations too. It's got so many like expansions, and it's an amazing RPG. I wish there was a group nearby that was playing it, but there isn't. I mean, not that I know of. I mean, there's my group, and then there's the other group that I'm a part of, which is a small group. Anyway, I'm going off on a tangent again. Freaking tangents. Alright, anyway. That's all I really wanted to talk about. My Girl's Guide to RPGs is concluded. So yeah, go game and have fun doing it. Have fun role playing. Bye.